Has been my growth. Have you guys not been able to hear me? Oh, geez. That would be lame. I think that my YouTube was muted that whole time. Okay, so this is or has been my growth. My shadows. Hard lessons. Okay, so what has happened that was difficult or uncomfortable? And I would even say in the last 2 to 3 years, right? From which I have grown / and or become deluded. Okay. And then that same question, what has happened that was difficult or uncomfortable in the last 2 to 3 years from which I have grown and or what does this become? Oh, from which I've grown or become deluded. And that's in my life. And then the same question in the nation / world. Okay, so that makes sense. YouTube was muted. Oh, thank you, babe. Yeah, I will save this. YouTube was muted, so apologies to everybody who came through over there. I don't know what to do about that. We'll see if we can get the sound pulled or pull a post and put it up somehow. Okay, so so here's the whole point of this. And this is about the emperor. This is going to come up in the ritual a little bit later. So the whole point here is the emperor doesn't really listen. The emperor imposes things on top of things, imposes structures, imposes order, imposes law, imposes rules. It draws lines and boundaries and separates things so as to dominate them. Okay, so as to be on top of them. So interestingly enough, it's important here to assess the structures that connect you with the bigger picture. And that's why we pulled on the astrology to say, what has happened in my life that was difficult or uncomfortable in the last 2 or 3 years from which I have grown tremendously and or become deluded. So we're dealing with really big topics that have caused us to grow, have caused us to face our fears, face our shadow, face our darkness, that we have learned really uncomfortable, difficult, hard lessons from, but which we have also grown from, okay? Or become deluded of, that we're also exhausted by and can't even deal with. Usually it's a thing that maybe you've been working on throughout your entire life. The point is that we're reaching something collectively as a human race, right, as humanity, in which magically, mystically, somehow, what you've gone through, what has traumatized you, the hard lessons that you've learned are being played out in a larger scale. So most likely, just in terms of this, the larger scale includes whatever's going on in the US, whatever's going on with Brexit, whatever's going on in Muslim countries, whatever's going on in Russia, all the stuff that's happening in Asia, like everything that's happening around the world is so damn intense. But what this is even saying to us is that right now we have an opportunity to understand where we're deluded and how to grow through this and even grow past this by acknowledging our relationship to the patriarchy and to our fathers and to the relationship between our fathers and our mothers, whether your father was there or absent or whatever. This just feels like this new moon is a great time to start talking about our daddy issues with the patriarchy. This brings up and reignites and reilluminates Me Too, Black Lives Matter, all the fakakta bullshit going on between the American government and trans people, all of it, right? How have your personal lessons, difficulties, struggles, challenges, delusions, exhaustions, how are they being mirrored in the world at large, okay? And then we're going to see how this gets a little more specific. So now we're talking about air signs, fire signs, water signs, earth signs. Okay. Air signs, it's the 9 of Wands. This tells us that you are, my guides are funny. So what I hear is a wonderful old booty house track, weather beaten hoochie bitch. So you're weather beaten, but you're fierce, right? You've made it this far. You've learned a lot. You have actually reached a certain level of standing and level of accomplishment in your life and in your work and in your career. And what you've gone for, you have to some extent achieved, right? The problem is that if you feel like you haven't, I would ask, who are you trying to please? You are giving us the energy. The 9 of Wands has the energy of like, you know, a 1950s traveling salesman dad who's come home or mom, but most likely dad at the time, who's come home and doesn't even talk about how much they've sold or what they've done with their day or, you know, how much of a killing they've made. They just sort of share the wealth. They don't really talk about it, but they know they've done well, okay? So there's another thing in here which just makes me wonder, like, do you realize how well you're doing? I would encourage you to have conversations about how far you've come professionally, how you've established yourself professionally, where you're at professionally, or goal-wise, right? What have you achieved? What have you accomplished? What have you been striving towards? And where are you at now? Okay. The theory would be if you have conversations about how you've grown, what you've grown past, what has deluded you, what you've managed to see through, that will provide the sort of overlay for which you can understand what's going on around you in the world at large. And the point here, and I think this is going to prove true through all the rest of the readings, is that when you understand your personal successes and failures, it helps to contextualize the intensity of the collective successes and failures. Even as we're looking at this, Gemini is like two-faced, right? Two faces, two twins. Even in that little intuitive astro read that we give you at the beginning, YouTubers, if you didn't see it, well, we're going to try to post it on Instagram too. Even if you didn't, in that little intuitive read, it's like there's the background of that Saturn-Pluto conjunction happening in addition to the foreground of this Gemini new moon. And it's almost like they're two sides of the same coin, two brothers or sisters from the same mother. And the idea is that both things are happening. And it's a question of which one are you seeing? Which one are you believing? Are you believing the shadow side? Or are you going to learn the hard lesson and see the light and release the light? Right? So there's a chance for even greater delusion because we only see one side of the coin and don't actually encourage the conversation that Gemini's trying to have about our growth. Because if we can understand our growth, our challenges, our struggles, it will make the larger uncertainty, the other side of the collective shadow, just hopefully make more sense and not be so scary and not be so intimidating. Do this work, yo. Do this inner work with the cards as we're calling them out, and then get back to us about what that revealed for you about the larger cosmic drama or the larger collective human drama, okay? Next thing, fire signs. The 8 of Cups. Perfect example here too. So the 8 of Cups is saying to look at and talk about your growth based on the attachments that you've been able to detach from. Maybe you haven't fully detached from them yet. Maybe you still feel like you're bouncing back and forth in between these two sides of the same coin. But the theory here is that you've actually achieved a state of inner something, inner balance, inner peace, it's the 8 of Cups. So it's inner emotional strength, even inner emotional power that if you can or if you can see clearly and communicate clearly to yourself or to someone else what you've seen through, what challenges you faced, what you've grown through, then if you can appreciate that, then you will appreciate the emotional a growth and establishment that has occurred for you. And you will actually see your power and prowess not by what you're attached to, but by what you have walked away from. You will see and understand your emotional power and prowess, fire signs, by what you are no longer attached to, not by what you are accomplished or what you have accomplished or what you're accomplishing. You will sense your accomplishment and your authority, Emperor, your order, by what you are no longer attached to, and almost like by what you are comfortable not knowing, by what you are comfortable flowing with, right? You will know your power through your comfort with uncertainty, right? And through your acceptance of uncertainty. Like that. We are back on YouTube, right? There is volume. Okay, so then, water signs. Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, water signs. The best way for you to harness this lunation is the Six of Cups reversed. And in your case, in our case, Emperor says authority. Daddy is never going to make it all better, right? Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, listen up. No one's coming along to make things better. No one's coming along to give you a handout. No one's coming along to give you a hand up. Assistance, guidance, support, expansion is a direct result of self-sufficiency. Your ability to give yourself what you need will create a ripple effect for others giving you more of what you need. You do not give yourself what you need by getting others to give you what you need. Don't wait for acts of charity or kindness. Look at what you've given away. Look at the ways in which you've dissolved your fantasy of being saved. So this is the thing to appreciate in terms of the conversations of growth. Look at how much you aren't waiting for a savior. Look at how clearly you are willing to see yourself and your shortcomings and the distance between you and your goals, okay? Appreciate how realistic you've become. Even if you have further to go, appreciate how realistic you've become. Earth signs, Capricorn, Taurus, Virgo, just go, bitch. Go, baby. Forget it's Gemini season. Pretend it's still Taurus season. We're remembering, hopefully you did work to figure out what happened to you during Taurus season when you were feeling really good and in your element. Now, we would actually it's the Chariot, so we would actually just say, run, bitch, run, keep going. Don't stop. Don't think a lot, but like, don't worry about, like, let the actions manifest themselves. Don't take action. Just keep moving. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Trust yourself. You are the one you've been waiting for. You've got what you need. Go, 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 go. Go now. Ask questions now if you want, but don't wait for the answers. Keep going and ask more questions. Embody Gemini by not caring. Embody Gemini by giving zero fucks and just continuing to go, proceeding at pace as though you're doing everything right. Okay. Okay, in terms of new moon ritual, I would just say, like we've said before, we like to light a candle. We like to light some incense or sage. We like to have a bowl of water and a dish of salt or a beautiful crystal that we love to represent all the elements, an image of a god form that you love, or, pictures of the ancestors. We're just thinking of stuff to call in ether. Even beautiful art that lifts you into a transcendent state, or beautiful music in the background, classical music that lifts you up and out of the four elements and into the ether. Libra, baby, was just about your experience. You've got to know your authority through assessing how far you've come. Have conversations about how much you've grown in terms of what you've gone after, the goals that you've set, the things you've accomplished. Theory is that you've accomplished more than you think, and even if you're weathered and tired, so are we all. You need to appreciate the standing that you have cultivated so that you can put that standing to work for those who maybe haven't or do not realize how much they've cultivated. Okay, thank you. In terms of this ritual, make a list of growth, regarding love, work, and overall / spiritual existence. Always remembering, you guys, that for us, spiritual equals existential. Existential equals meaning. Spiritual equals meaningful, right? These subjective truths, these things that to connect to, but because of his own stuff, couldn't quite or didn't want to say he loved her. And he said to her at one point, he was like, "Don't you cry, because then I'll cry." And then he just accomplished this major thing. He was so high and so excited. And then she started crying. And then he barely started tearing up. You didn't see him tear up. And TBH, her tears didn't sound like, oh, like flowing tears. They sounded a little bit like she was trying to cry or resisting crying. But then something happened where nothing visible happened on the screen, but energetically, goosh. And no one, I can't prove it. You can't prove it. Maybe the filmmaker can prove it, but I don't even know if the filmmaker can prove it. Love happened. The heart happened. The heart and love are spiritual, meaningful, existential. So that shit that matters to you, that seems like it doesn't matter to anybody else, some of the most important stuff to at least try to articulate or share or dialogue about inside of yourself, because it may be the only thing that keeps us going. Okay? With that said, make a list of growth regarding love, work, and overall spiritual existence, especially regarding hard lessons about the shadow self, the stuff we'd rather not know about, the unconscious, stuff we didn't know, and delusions, right? Where was I deluded that I saw through? Or where have I grown that I've now become deluded about? You're really just trying to zero in on what's the hardest, most lesson learning stuff that you didn't want to see shadow from the last even 2 to 3 years, okay? And then the point here is to notice 1 to 3 areas in the larger world where you see these growth, shadow, delusions active, okay? And then the final part is, this is after you've lit a candle. Look, when we first started doing this, we wanted you guys to do like high magic rituals just because we know everybody's a healer and that everybody's psychic, but we presume that everybody's comfortable doing complicated rituals. We realized that is not the case. We also, once we got deeper into the Edible Spirit experience, we were like, no, this is the experience that we created that we wish we had had a year or 2 ago, so that we can feel like and know that we're doing what we need to do to align with these cycles of time and these cycles of space and these cycles of meaning. But also so that it's like not stupid and annoying and needlessly esoteric and overly complicated. So after talking to so many of you who have been following us and working with us and who've been members of the experience for a while, we're getting the vibe that this shit is like a recipe. So no matter what we give you, you're going to do your thing anyway. And we want that. We encourage that. But we basically have also realized that our viewer has no issues drinking a glass of wine, sparking a doob, and doing their full moon, new moon rituals from a place of like non-stressful, non-Virgoan, like non-perfectionist balance and chill and calm and poise. And what we argue is that while, yeah, it might be super important to do like a high magic ritual on, you know, the solstice, if you spend 4 hours on the longest night of the year with your people, loving, sharing, you know, talking about problems and solutions, being open, being vulnerable, drinking some wine or eating a delicious meal or watching a movie or something, isn't that a beautiful ritual anyway? And just remembering that ritual is just about bringing form, intention, and attention to these non-physical things so that we can make them explicit and thereby align with their power, magic, and mojo. So the final thing, after you bring in those elements, open up a sacred space, take a bunch of deep breaths, calling your ancestors, calling your guidance, set the intention to connect to the new moon, calling on all of the ancestors' guidance, affirming that this is a ritual to honor the new moon, like that, simply. Making a little list, or if you're doing this with someone, you don't even have to make the list. Talk about the hard lessons and the growth cycles that you've experienced, especially regarding delusions in love, in work, or in ambition, goals, dreams, and in your overall spiritual existence. And then, especially hard lessons about the shadow self, the unconscious, and delusions. And then a few areas in the larger world after you've articulated those things where you see the stuff you've been going through happening in the bigger world around you. The idea is to just make this chaos out there not so seemingly incomprehensible and out of alignment, recognizing that we are dealing personally with the things that we are dealing with collectively. If we can establish a through line personally through dialogue, Gemini season, we can establish a through line collectively through dialogue, through, you know, larger cycles of time. And then, in the light of this new moon, in the quiet light of this new moon, I align with the will to have growth-based conversations regarding all of this and more as needed in love, light, balance, and service in the highest good of all, with harm to none. Harm to none. Okay. I think what we'll do is as soon as we get off of this, we'll try to figure out what happened with the stream, see if we can't post that Instagram stream onto the YouTube so that you guys can get the beginning, and then we'll pull this little list of ritual stuff from the very end. Once you make that final declaration, I align with the will to have growth-based conversations. In the quiet light of this new moon, I align with the will to have growth-based conversations regarding all of this and more as needed in love, light, balance, and service, and the highest good of all involved with harm to none. And so it is. And this new moon ritual is now over. This circle is closed. This session is complete. That would be the way to do it. Stick with us, you guys. You know, if you hang with us over time, we just, there were times where we didn't do ritual because we felt overwhelmed by the you know, the details of it. And so we always encourage you and remind you that pausing and looking at the moon on the day of the new moon, full moon, that's a step, that's a ritual, that's a synchronicity, you know, that helps you to align with all of this power. But articulating whatever you like of this, forgetting whatever you don't like, articulating whatever you do like, making it your own, getting into this pattern. Every time you check in with one of these cycles, you get a beautiful dose of cosmically infused light, which, I'm sorry, if the only thing you're doing is checking in with your Instagram feed or checking in with, you know, the news, you're only getting infusions of that light, because that light clogs up the cosmic light. You know, our bodies are only so big, they can handle more, but all of the stress and trauma makes our channels smaller, it makes our capacity smaller, and not smaller, but tighter. It makes it feel smaller. So when we let in these larger elements, these aspects of cosmic light, we get expanded. We create more light, more ether, more space inside of our beings. The rest of the elements balance out. They support us. They sustain us. They allow us to live another day and offer whatever wisdom we've accrued to those who need it. Okay? Love you so fucking much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in for this Gemini new moon. Thank you, experience members. Thank you, everybody else. Join the experience, ediblespirit.com/about/experience about, or you can just go to the homepage and check it, or on Instagram, check the links in the link tree, okay? Love you guys. Love you so much. Have a beautiful day, and see you later this week for the Elements of Spirit, and then see you next week for something else.